All right. Welcome, everyone. Great to be here with you. We are at the top of the hour, so we are going to go ahead and dive in. So, if you haven't had a chance to attend a Zoom meeting recently, the way that this works is you will be able to interact with the Q&A. So, if you look at your Zoom screen there on the very bottom, you'll see a Q&A button. So, we won't be bringing other people onto this lunch and learn today, but you will be able to ask your questions in that box. So go ahead and locate that now if you like. And I'm going to give Zoom a moment to allow people to load. Sometimes it does take a minute for people to come in, especially during these times where everyone seems to be on Zoom right now. So we'll give Zoom a moment to load. And in the meantime, I'll introduce myself. So, my name is Lisa. I am a confidence coach and I help professionals become more confident in their careers, not only so that they can have career success, which is important, but really so they can be there for themselves, so they can show up, so they can trust themselves, make quicker decisions, and stick to those decisions, which is a lot of what we're talking about today. So, if you haven't had a chance to check out last week's Lunch and Learn, I do recommend you go back and check out that replay. I'll be sending that replay out later this week. So, you'll be able to see last week's. You don't need to have already experienced that to know the content for this week. So, it's fine. You're welcome to be here now if you didn't already see last week's content, and you'll still get a ton of value out of this Lunch and Learn. And since you're here, my guess is you're wanting to know more about decisions. And last week we also talked about decisions. So, highly recommend you check that out. All right, so let's get started, shall we? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I don't know about you, but I'm a visual learner myself. So, it helps me when I'm on webinars as a participant to be able to have something to see as we're going. Okay. So, we're talking all about decision making, and we're really focused on this concept of the magic box of decision making. I know it sounds a little gimmicky. I was a little hesitant, honestly, to call it this, but it just it just felt right, and you'll see why as we're going through the content, because there is no magic button that we can press that once we press it, all of a sudden we make decisions quickly and easily and we stick to them. Doesn't exist. At least I haven't found it. But there is this idea of this magic box. And when we know how to access this place within us, we can then show up with our decisions more confidently, more surely, and stick to those decisions. Because it's not just about making the decision, it's also about taking action after we decide. And so in this Lunch and Learn, we're going to be talking about both. So there's three specific things we'll cover. We're going to start with the four box decision model. And this is, it sounds kind of scientific, four box decision model. And what it'll do is it'll break down how we tend to decide, and you'll be able to plot where you're at. So I invite you to have a specific decision in mind, maybe one that you haven't made yet, or maybe one that you recently made, because as we're talking about that decision model, it'll help it come to life a bit more. And then we're going to talk about that magic box so we can figure out how to get in that box where we're making those decisions and committed to the decisions that we made. And then we'll talk about decision whiplash as the third concept. If you've ever been someone who's made a decision and then you just start second guessing it, you get stuck in that spin, and then the self-doubt comes in, and then the inner judger comes in, and you're not actually moving forward. There's no momentum. Yeah, that's called decision whiplash. It's normal. And if we know what it is, we can help ourselves get out of it. So that's what we're covering today. Let's dive in. The four box decision model is where we start. All right. So we have a graph here. We have our y axis here with the actions. And what this means is down on this bottom corner here, there's no action happening. And then at the top, we're having our actions. And then decisions is on our x axis, which means at the far left, it's as if we've made no decision. And then at the far right, it's as if we've made a decision. And so if we take this model and we think about how does this fit with the decisions that we're making, here's how these work together. You have one spot where you're making no decision and no action. So this might be if you've ever been to the point where you don't know what to have for dinner, you haven't decided, and you're not taking any action to make anything either. No decisions happening, no actions happening. You're just stuck and there's no clarity. So that might be where you are at with some decisions. You might be in this other box though, which is you've made no decision, but you're taking action. So this is you going through the fridge, frantically looking for anything that there could be to eat, but not actually having any clarity about what you want. And so you're not ever coming to a decision about what to make. You're just like opening every cupboard in your house, trying to figure out what you'll have for dinner. As you can see, I might not do a lot of the cooking at our house. So those are two places that you can be where no decision is happening, but you might be taking action or not. The other place in this model is called decision, but no action. So we will touch on this week. These other two boxes here, we talked about last week. So again, I recommend you go back and check out that replay. I'll be sending it out this week so you have it. But when you're in no action, but you've decided, it looks like this. You think, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to have some pasta for dinner. But then you don't actually do anything to make that happen. You don't check to see that you have the ingredients, or you don't start cooking, or you don't have any plan to make it happen. There's no action being done. So it's like you don't really have any momentum going. You're not moving forward with it. So we will talk about what happens when you're in that spot. Then that fourth box is where you make a decision and then you take action. And this is where the magic happens. This is what we call that magic box, because what we want to do is we want to decide and be able to act. So I'm going to pause here and give you a moment to think about a decision either that you recently made or have coming up. And I want you to think for a moment about which of these boxes you're in. Now, whichever box it is, the goal is to get in the magic box. And if you're not in that box or you were in it and then you got out of it, it's okay. You can always get back into it. But we just needed to know first what the boxes were so we could plot ourselves and know where we're at. All right, so now that you know this decision model, and I know we're going quick, but that's because I want to make sure we can cover all of this content. And if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A, or you're welcome to send me a note afterwards. But now that we have this model, let's go to that next step. Let's talk about the magic box and really break it down. So we have that box, which I highlighted earlier, the decision and action box. That's our magic box. And it has two pieces within it, pretty obvious pieces we've already talked about. It's one, we decide, and two, we act. But what happens a lot of the time is we don't ever do both those things. And so we're not in the box. So let's break this down into these two pieces to help ourselves do each of these components. So if we're going to do the first component, which is to decide, what do we need? Well, here's what happens. We have our decision and we have us. So we're this lovely blue figure here, and we have our decision. Something to decide upon. Let's say for you, it's whether or not you want to change jobs. Okay, so that's the decision. What is in between you and deciding is this chasm, this fog. And that fog, well, it's our brain, it's our thoughts about the decision. It's what we're thinking about being able to decide. It's thinking things that literally stop us from deciding. I think about it like a pinball machine where you go and you have a thought and it hits this wall before the decision, and it like shoots the thought off in another direction. So you might have a thought like, what might be a thought? Oh, well, I just don't know if now's the right time to move jobs. Or I need to get my resume ready first, so I should probably do that first. Or, well, the beginning of the year is a better time to think about this. I'm not ready to decide yet. And you have all of these thoughts that stop you from even making a decision. So, what we need to do is we need to help ourselves get through the thoughts that are stopping us. How do we do that? Well, there's two things. First, we need to clear away that mental clutter. And this is something that I work with my clients with one on one, where we really dive into their brain. And for you here on this call now, it's even something like taking a piece of paper and writing down all of the thoughts you have about the decision. So if you're trying to decide whether or not to bring something up to your boss and you're not sure, write down all of the thoughts you have about that decision. The thoughts often hide as facts. It sounds like logic or reason or what you're supposed to do or what the data says or suggests. And while that might be true, we have to remember to see them as thoughts in our head because they're not necessarily truth. It's this fog that's stopping us from being able to decide. And so once we've gotten clear on what that fog is in front of us, between us and our decision, we then need to come up with something that'll propel us to decide. So something that can get us through that bridge, that fog. We've cleared the fog some because we now see the fog for what it is, just these thoughts that our brain puts out there. But what we need to do to decide is have some sort of commitment, have some sort of willingness, something to propel us to decide, even though we have these thoughts. So, a lot of times when I'm working with clients, they want to feel confident before they decide something. Because if they could just feel confident, then they could make a decision. Like we think we have to have confidence to decide. And what I want to offer to you is you don't need to have confidence to decide. All you really need is to feel willing or to feel committed to decide. Because if we wait for confidence, often we stop ourselves from ever moving forward because what usually gives us confidence is us knowing we can do something, but we don't know we can do it till we decide to do it and we do it. So we can never decide if we're waiting for the confidence that comes to us after we do the thing. So we set us up for this impossible situation. We don't move forward. So instead of looking for confidence, we want to look for some type of way or feeling that can propel us to decide. So for me, it's often a feeling of willingness to decide. And so for me, that thought that I'd need to think would be something like, I don't know what's necessarily the best approach, but I'm going to decide by so and so date and move forward anyways. For someone else, it might be, you know what? I've just decided that at this point, I'm no longer going to spin in indecision. Or it might look like, let's just try it and see. That little bit of intrigue, that willingness to test it out. So think about that for you. What would help you get through that fog so that you can go through some of the brain drama and into the decision? Because that's that first step, right? It's deciding. Okay, what do we do next? Well, once we decide, we're brought to that next step, which is to act. And this is where decision whiplash will come into play. So we're going to talk about that next because it's going to help us see what our brain tends to do. So we want to decide and then act. So we've talked about how to decide. And this is something that I work with people one-on-one with because sometimes we're not always clear on what those thoughts are that are stopping us from deciding. So we benefit from having a coach help us sift through our mind. So if that is you, if that's something that you're wanting help with, let me know. I do strongly recommend that you check out my program. If you go to lisaphilia.com/programs, it shares all of the details and you can see how that fits for you and what you're wanting. And you're always welcome to reach out with any questions you have about it. Now, let's say you've decided, which means you've maybe decided, yes, I'm leaving my job. What comes next is acting, as in take action. So we've already talked about this model here, right? That you have that willingness or that commitment or that thought that gets you to decide, that is strong enough in you that it creates this sense where you know you will decide and you decide. Now, what you can do is you can take that same sense of willingness or commitment, and it can be strong enough that it takes you into action to where you decide something and then you immediately do it because you have such a strong conviction in you because you created it by how you are seeing that decision. And it doesn't have to require experience or knowledge or data or a bunch of people's perspective or opinion on it. It truly just takes you showing up for yourself and choosing to decide no matter what. And when you have that level of conviction and it's strong and powerful enough, it will take you all the way into action to where you've decided and you take the first step. So, if we use our example we've been using around deciding to quit or change jobs, what's the action? Well, it literally could be to put in your 2-week notice. It doesn't have to be, though. It could be an action like apply for 5 jobs, set up an informational interview, finish my resume and send it to a colleague in the industry. It doesn't have to be the full action, even just one action, but you're already taking steps by doing things to move that decision forward. Okay. What happens if you've decided, but it doesn't feel like you're moving? Nothing's happening. Well, this is something I am familiar with, and I have a feeling you may be familiar with too, or at least know someone who's been familiar with it, because it's something that's fairly common. What happens is our decision has been made, so we've already decided, but we have that same what are those? The pinball machine reaction where it's not strong enough to get us to act. It's not compelling enough to get us to take action. And so we spin off into decision whiplash land, which basically means our brain starts spiraling. So if you're the one sitting there saying, all right, I've decided I'm changing jobs, and you've made the decision, but you're not actually doing anything, what happens is our brain starts to question us and think, okay, so we made this decision, but we haven't actually done anything yet. Okay, what's our plan here? No plan? Okay, well, I wonder if we made the right choice. It's possible that things could shape up. It's possible that this isn't really the best time. You know what? I don't know. I might have made the wrong decision. And so what happens is they go back and they spin, and let me go and pull up the slide for it. They spin in decision whiplash, which is this cycle where you're continually making a decision, saying, I'm going to do this thing, not acting on it, letting not acting on it mean, oh, you know what? I must have made the wrong decision. So you go back up in here into this thought fog land, and you add more thoughts about the decision. So then you have to try to recommit to your decision again. And then maybe if you don't act again, you get stuck and you're in this cycle over and over and over. How do we get out of this cycle? Okay, there's 4 things I want to leave you with because these 4 things will help you to not get stuck in this cycle. And the first one is to know that it is normal. Well, we've talked about that here a little bit. And in our next Lunch and Learn, we are going to be diving into this in detail because there's 3 motives that our brain has that often stop us from moving forward. And when we know what those motives are, it can help us to spot them. And so for now, I'm going to say, no, this is normal. And then next week, we'll dive into really what we mean there. So know it's normal and plan for it to happen. So what this means is as you decide, you can just remind yourself, "Hey, I'm going to decide," and my brain will probably freak out, and if it freaks out, I'm going to remind it why I'm doing this. Or if it freaks out, I'm not going to let that mean anything's gone wrong. Those types of things you plan ahead of time, then when it happens, it's just, "Oh, there's my brain right on schedule." It doesn't have to mean anything. The other point is what I just said, don't let it mean anything. Here's what's happened. You've had a thought, a questioning, a second guessing. It's just a thought. Your brain's presenting it to you like a dish on a platter. Would you like this thought here that I'm offering? And you get to decide yes or no. Just because it's offering it to you doesn't mean you have to take it. So it doesn't have to mean anything. And I recommend you just don't let it mean anything. Because the worst that could happen is what? Well, you move forward on that action and it doesn't work out. So that's that last piece. Take action anyways. So even if your brain's presenting you these things, if you have already decided, it's as good as done. You've decided. So you move forward and take action anyways, knowing you've already committed to it. Worse that happens, it doesn't turn out and you have new data to then take to your next decision. So that is the process that we talked through, and that gets you out of decision whiplash so you're able to move forward. So we've talked about that 4-box decision model. We've talked about this magic box, that magic place to be to decide. We've talked about how to help ourselves not get sucked into decision whiplash and get back into that magic box so we can stick to the decisions that we make. And all of this comes down to say is you have this magic box available to you at any time. You don't need to have confidence to decide. You just need something to propel you forward that you create and then to take action anyways. So, if you would like help sifting through some of the thoughts you have about upcoming decisions or just working on your confidence in your career, then I have a program for you. If you're wanting to learn more, I'm going to share what my program is now. If you are not looking for additional support right now, totally fine. Thank you so much for coming and feel free to sign off now. But for those of you who are interested and intrigued, I am going to take a couple minutes here to tell you what it's all about. So, what this is it's the Take Charge of Your Career Confidence program. And what we're doing in this program is we're debunking 5 myths that stop self confidence. There's 5 myths, and we didn't even touch on them today. But if we can understand what these 5 are, it helps us to know how to create more confidence, how to show up for ourselves. Because a lot of what we're told in the media and society, even in the research, when misinterpreted, isn't quite accurate and it stops us from being able to fully access who we are. So that's what we do in this program. Then we quiet that inner judger. We all have that voice in our head that tells us we're not quite good enough, or we should have done better, or we could have been better, or it's not high enough quality. However, it sounds to you, there's a way to work with that judger so that you're not always in conflict. So you're not always in a battle, to use those judgments for you, not to make them mean that they're true, but in a way where you can get support and be there for yourself. The brain does not need to be a battlefield, and we'll talk about how to do that. And then we'll go over speaking up and making bold moves. You have things to say. You have an opinion. You have an intuition inside that you can access, and you can use it to show up powerfully, strongly as you. And you can make those bold moves for yourself in your career, in your life, and we'll help you to do that. And then also, I want to share, we'll talk a lot about decisions, what you want, and how to take action, especially when it comes to careers and purpose, especially when it comes to little decisions at work about how to respond to people, how to show up in meetings. Those are all things that we cover in this program. So if you are interested and you're wanting to learn more, just go to lisaphilia.com/programs. This is a confidence coaching program. So all of this is a 3-month experience where we're working together one-on-one. You're getting individual coaching one-on-one and also a guided course where the concepts really come to life in videos similar to what you're seeing here, but in a video extensive format in this course. So feel free to check it out there. If you have any questions, let me know. And I look forward to seeing you all next week where we'll be diving in to our brain and those motives about decisions and about what stops us from moving forward. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk soon. Bye.